We call the meeting the November meeting of the Black Mountain Board of Aldermen, and if you would, let's rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and Maggie, if you would introduce our guest that'll have our invocation for us.
Yes, I would like to officially welcome to Black Mountain the Reverend Lawrence Sam Salata, who is the pastor of the Black Mountain United Methodist Church right here in town. So we're happy to have you for our invocation.
Right up here, Lauren, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Of course.
Take this off so you can hear me better. Friends, let us pray. Gracious God, source of life and love, we give you thanks for the gift of this day and for the opportunities it provides to serve you and your people. We thank you for these engaged citizens and public servants who give of themselves for the welfare of this community. As we enter into a time of discernment and decision, we pray for open ears that we might listen well to each other. We pray for compassion to care for our neighbors, those we see and those who may sometimes be overlooked. And we ask for your vision that we might lead this community into a future of flourishing and hope. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be seated. Well, we had an election on Tuesday, and congratulations to Alderman Patilla. Very good. Congratulations on your win, and also to Pam King and Guy Hay, who will swear in next week. And Jennifer, we appreciate you, your service, and
Absolutely.
also appreciate you running.
Thank you.
And engaging, and we'll look forward to your continued engagement in town business. So thank you again for your service. The town offices will be closed on Veterans Day, November the 11th. And then also on Thanksgiving Day and the Friday after. So with that, do we have any citizen comments, Savannah or Josh?
Your comments are going to be for the public hearings.
Right, okay, very good. All right, with that, I think before we enter into the consent agenda, Josh, did you have an item you wanted to?
Sure. On item 8D under new business, amendments to chapter 48 of the Code of Ordinances, specifically ordinance number 0-20-14. Staff would like to pull this and bring it back next month. We found some inconsistencies in the amendment, and we just want to make sure that is correct for your approval next month.
Sounds good. I think we need a motion to that effect.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make that motion to remove item 8D.
Very good. Sounds good. Thank you. Let's start the roll call, Ryan.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patilla, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye. Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Thank you. That sounds good. All right. Consent agenda as is amended, or the agenda as amended, and the consent agenda, Josh.
Item 5A will be your adoption of minutes, and that would be the October 12th, 2020 regular session meeting, as well as the closed session meeting. 5B is a call for public hearing. This would be for a closing of the portion of an unopened platted portion of a right-of-way parallel in between West College Street and Goldmont Street. Item 5C is a budget amendment for police vehicle. We ran into some trouble. We had an accident that was police car was involved in, I guess probably a month and a half ago or so, and the insurance company totaled the vehicle. So this budget amendment is for the amount of $15,000 to cover the amount we're getting back from the insurance company to go forward for the new vehicle, and that will be your consent agenda.
Very good. Any questions for Josh on that? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Very good. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, Ryan, if you'll just start the roll call again.
Sure. Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patilla, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye. Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Thank you. All right, and I assume we don't have any citizen comments that came in the few seconds that have passed since I just asked, and
No,
so
no, sir.
no unfinished business. We're on to new business. Item A.
All right, 8A is a Portman Villa lien. So I mentioned this in our agenda meeting. So back in 2015, there was a structure located at 204 Portman Villa Road that went through the condemnation process for unsafe conditions, and it was ordered to be demolished. The property owner was given the opportunity to do that. He was unable to perform that work or have someone perform that work, so the town paid to have the structure demolished, and that was a total of $6,500. $6,500. A lien was placed on that property back in April of 2016. The property owner did reach out to me and wanted to seek some assistance from the town if that was at all possible. I will say that since that lien's been placed on that property, 8% interest accrues a year, bringing that total to roughly $8,843. The property owner that owned the property when this took place, according to the son, may have been suffering from some dementia, and the son, as I mentioned, would like to ask the board for any kind of forgiveness or financial assistance on the matter.
Any questions for Josh on that to clarify the decision before the board? Any discussion on it? So the owner still, they own the property, got the lien on it. Is the original property owner the father? Is he still living?
I think
He is.
Still living, and so forth. The question I might have, I mean, if it's a lien, it's not costing them anything. It's a lien. Well, but that's to me that if I understand the dynamics of the decision that the board needs to make. The town paid to have a building demolished that needed to be demolished, so we provided a service, and so I don't think it's not in my thinking it's not inequitable for for the property owner to pay for that. We improved the property; it probably had to be demolished, by seller or buyer one for the property to be sold. So. It may be the issue of, in my thinking, of the interest.
How about
The interest.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the,
Give that.
yeah, that's the issue I think for the board to well, both issues, but you might concur that it's fair for the lien to stand. And Ron, the interest would not be due until the property is sold anyway?
Well, whenever it's paid, it's accruing daily.
Yeah.
And whenever you get paid, you normally collect interest to that date. And I guess the board has three approaches to this. One is leave it alone, let them pay the full amount. Second is waive the interest or some portion of it, or waive the interest or some portion of the principal, or write it off altogether. That's
Yep.
probably not
Right.
Not on the front of anybody's mind at this point, but in the way we leave.
And if the board decided to not take action, just let interest and principal stand and continue, the interest continues to accrue, the board could always revisit it when the property's sold.
That's correct.
Because even if we waived interest now, it may not be sold for 2 or 3 years.
But let me, the town might want to approach that like if you've ever negotiated a debt. The credit card company or whoever it is says, okay, we will accept X amount of dollars if we're paid within 30 days or 60 days, not to waive the interest, just to let it start accruing again. So there's a cutoff point.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thoughts?
I'm just wondering if Mr. Fabro, suffered, suffering dementia or diminished capacity, did he really understand what was happening at the time?
That would be a reason to abate some or all of the interest.
Mhm. if we if we cancel the interest, can we stop it from accruing so that when the property is sold, they just pay the $6,500?
That's an option available to you, Ms. Carter.
I would make that motion.
That was my question.
So Jennifer's made a motion that, that all the interest be abated and that no additional interest be accrued on the $6,500 lien.
Correct.
All right, that's the motion in front of the board. Is there any discussion on it? All right, if there's not, then Ryan, if you start the roll call.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Portillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right, thank you. All right, Dot. B, adoption of the Town of Black Mountain Standards and Detail Model.
So 8B is just what the mayor mentioned, the adoption of a standards and details manual. So currently the way our land use code is set up, there are multiple locations throughout the land use code as well as the code of ordinances, not to confuse anybody. But you have regulations that are dispersed throughout that. Sometimes they're inconsistent with each other. And if I'm a developer and I'm coming in, it would be nice to be able to go to one place and find out everything I needed to do for this project as far as the utilities and rights of way and streets go. So what you have to vote on in front of you is going to be the creation of a standards and details manual that also will include requirements from NCDOT, the fire code, as well as others. And you know, from my perspective, this is just going to make it easier for folks to go to one place to find out what they need to do and not have to skip around all these different chapters where it's easy to miss things. And that's rather long. I'll say, you know, quite a bit of this information you'll see is subdivision road standards from NCDOT, which is what we follow anyway. Now we'll be kind of in here and we'll have it in our possession and folks will be able to look at this and go to this instead of trying to skip around through our different chapters. So I think it's going to be a benefit for folks.
Nothing new as far as the content, it's just the manner in which it's presented.
That's correct.
All right, any questions from the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion for the adoption of the Town of Black Mountain Standards and Detail Manual 0-20-17.
So moved.
All right, any other discussion? If not, Alderman Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Portillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Thank you. Item C, Josh, amendments to Chapter 43 of the Code of Ordinances.
So Chapter 43 of the Code of Ordinances, this is, if you look at that section specifically, it's going to mention a lot of different editions of the fire code. And what we're doing here is striking through, I think, for example, it says 2006. We want to have that to be current fire code. That way we don't have to make that change every time they update that manual. And that's essentially what this is. And then it just puts in reference the Black Mountain Standards and Details Manual.
So again, nothing new, but updated and clarified.
Correct.
All right, I'd entertain a motion for the amendments to Chapter 43 of the Code of Ordinances 0-20-18.
So moved.
Any discussion or questions? Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Portillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Very good, thank you. And now we're at update on solar projects for municipal buildings.
Sure. So the county did embark on some solar analysis of different buildings throughout the county. We wanted to get in on that project as well. So a number of months ago, we began having conversations with the county folks. What they've done for us is that they hired an independent contractor, Pisca Energy Design and Development, to do some analysis of buildings throughout the county. 3 buildings here specifically in town: the Public Works Building / Parks and Rec, the Public Safety Building, which would be Police and Fire, and the Carver Community Center, which is mostly Montessori at this point. What staff would like to do would be to go ahead and continue moving forward with this project and get into the RFP phase that the county is going to be going into next. After speaking with them, that looks to be probably in the summer sometime coming up. At that point, we'll know better the cost. Currently, right here, we do have some cost, but we do think with economies of scale, with more buildings being in the project, that we can get some of this a little cheaper. But right now, just kind of for your reference, the total project cost for these 3 buildings would be $389,000, and the payback period, if you averaged it, would be about 18, almost 19 years for the payback for it. But I think it's worth I guess staying with it just to see what we get when the RFP goes out.
Right.
But that really is just kind of informational.
No action required. Any questions for Josh on that? And Pisgah Energy is doing this for the whole county?
Yeah.
Do
Think
they?
so.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. All right, sanitation update, Josh.
All right, so we actually got our information. I was getting concerned on whether we were going to get the financing rates from BB&T. As I mentioned to you in our agenda meeting, we've been doing sanitation now for about a month and a half, roughly. I think when we went into this, we were hopeful that we may be able to get by with what we have currently, which is 5 employees and 4 trucks. So that's 2 rear loaders, a scout truck, and a brush truck. What staff would like would be if we have 2 more sanitation trucks, which would be 1 rear loader truck and 1 scout truck. The rear loader at about $180,000, which is what we paid for the previous ones, and the scout truck's around $65,000. As well as 2 employees. Those employees right now are making around $50,000 a year or so is what we've planned that they're going to make by the end of the year. But the financing for the trucks, we got the information back from BB&T. Staff would recommend we do a 5-year, but they gave us a 5-year and a 7-year term. The interest rate on the 5-year is 1.61%, so it's really good interest rate. 7-year is 1.81%. Now your differences in payments are about $20,000 or so. The 5-year payment is going to be $51,391.90, and the 7-year is $37,579.44. The current trucks we have are on a 5-year, or excuse me, a 7-year financing term. As I mentioned in the meeting, with the addition of 2 employees and 2 trucks, we will still be under our. We'll be about. What did I tell you? We will be at
$10,060,000 versus 780. Or
790.
790. So $1,060,000 being Waste Pro's bid for us, and that was for the current fiscal year it was for the contract starting in October.
That's correct.
Of this year. And it was $1,060,000 to continue with the same level of service that they were providing. So, in bringing it in-house and adding an additional rear end loader and what's the name of the other truck?
Scout truck.
Scout truck. And adding 2 more employees, we're at $790,000.
That's correct.
And $790,000 versus $1,060,000. So it's still, for the public's consumption, it's still a decision that you look at the numbers and it's hard to justify us not bringing it in-house. So I'm glad we're kind of getting the staffing up, in particular, Josh, just because I think there could be safety issues if we're not staffed properly.
Yeah.
And also for the public information, the additional truck, everyone else, our other municipalities in the county, and I'm sure elsewhere as well, you have to have the backup truck, or you can't afford not to have it. And so there are other ways to go about it, but it's most economical to go ahead and finance it. I also think there's some merit in getting the equipment that you need in place. I mean, it'll rotate around, and we're going to have to, the equipment will have to be replaced, and so you've got the payment set. It's going to hinge a little bit on interest rates and so forth, but I think it's a prudent way to proceed. So Josh, you would like for the board to entertain a motion? How about just
Sure, I think
Okay.
it's going to be up to the board whether y'all want to do the 5 or the 7
Right.
on the financing. And just, give a motion to approve that, I guess, and give me authorization to sign
And about the 2, do you
and
need?
hire 2 employees.
And for the packages, do you have details on the packages? Because those probably should be in the minutes.
What do you mean when you say packages?
Well, the employment packages, what you're paying them.
Well, it's just short of 50,000 a year. It's 49,000 and some change.
Do you need any more detail on that in the minutes, you think,
I
Ron?
don't think so. Basically, he's asking, these will be getting the same pay as your present.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So maybe before someone makes a motion, let's decide what the board's opinion on 5 or 7 years.
So my question on the interest rate is does the interest, like, if you pay the loan off early, does the interest still accrue, or do you just pay off, like, is it simple interest?
It is,
It is, from my understanding of past BB&T loans, it is simple interest if there's no prepayment penalty, and I don't think we had a prepayment penalty in the last one.
I don't think we do either.
Kirk's outside the door there, if you,
Kirk out there?
you should stand right beside the door.
Mr. Medlin, can we pay off the loan early without penalty?
Yes, it's just, let me go over there, I'm sorry.
I don't think you're fine. I think you're.
Yes, we can pay it off early without any penalty. It'll be just like the first one we did for the first 2 vehicles. So that's completely an option that we can do. And the rates are excellent. I think, I didn't get to hear if Josh announced the rates, but they're great. But if we can pay it off, then we can certainly do that early without any issues.
My thought process behind that is doing a 7-year financing, but paying the 5-year amount, so that if you do pay it off early, great, but if you have a year where you need to have that reserve, you've got a little wiggle room.
And if there's any merit in it, it's consistent with the other trucks too. I don't know if that I don't know if that matters, but to me it kind of seems to matter a little bit.
Yeah, that was my only thought process in asking that question between the 5 and the 7.
Very good.
And one thing I did want to say is that this one will start, this payment will be around this time of year once we close it out, which I felt was more beneficial because since ad valorem starts coming in this time of year, that way we wouldn't have these 2 payments together, because they gave us that option of putting the 2 payments at the same time. And I felt like ad valorem coming in and us not having to move money around was a better option. So this payment will be about this time of year, every year going forward, whenever we close. So it seemed like the best option for us to do.
Thank you. You got any other questions?
Josh, how long will it take to get these 2 trucks?
Well, the rear loader, probably about 3 months.
Okay.
Now, what that means is, we necessarily won't have backup. Now, we do have the opportunity to, if something happens that's bad, we can always rent a truck. But for as little as they've been down right now, I think we're okay. Now, I think with the extra employees, that's going to be a game changer, because now you have 2 people on the back of a truck slinging trash instead of 1 person.
But what will that do to your brush pickup? Will you be able to do that as originally planned, all on Friday?
That's a very possible that we do that all on Friday now.
Yeah, that would be, I believe that would be a good objective to. It's pretty confusing to the public that it's out on Friday, but it might not get picked up on Friday.
Yeah.
I think we have to address that a little bit. All right. Anybody have a motion, perhaps?
I would make the motion to approve the financing for the one rear loader, 1 scout truck, and 2 additional sanitation employees. I would recommend a 7-year financing.
Very good. Here's your motion, and you want the employees, 2 employees at?
2 employees, yes, at the salary that you spoke of.
Yeah, current package for the other
Correct.
similar employees. Very good. All right, that's the motion. Is that clear enough for everybody? All right. Any other discussion? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Very good. Thank you. All right, so we are on to our public hearing, and as we discussed in the agenda meeting, we'll just move through this in a fashion similar to, we'll move through this public hearing that we continued in a fashion similar to the hearing, as if we had never heard it, and have public comment and so forth. So, Jessica?
Yes, thank you. So
I'm sorry. Do you mind to remove your mask?
I do, if that's okay.
Well, I think we may have an issue hearing you, but so just try to speak as clear
I
as you
will,
can.
is this better?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm a little soft-spoken anyway. I apologize. So as the mayor said, this is a continuance of a rezoning hearing we started last month for 324 North Fork Road, and the request was to go from CR1 to TR4 from the middle of the creek on the west side and CR1 to SR2 on the east side. We provided some additional information that I think may be fruitful for your conversation tonight in your agenda packet that we can go over, including the topography. We were concerned about issues of slope.
If I may, at this point, I believe last month we had closed the public hearing, it was in discussion. You're going to be getting new evidence. I recommend a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to open the public hearing.
very good. Any discussion on that? All right, Alderman Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Very good. Go right ahead.
The percent slope is average for the parcel, and we use a tool that is provided from Buncombe County, and that's how we evaluate all slope for all applications, and it's 18.72%, and is not subject to the steep slope ordinance on our records. Another topic that we discussed was the fact that the recommendation from the planning board was a split zoning. So we wanted to discuss the area of each proposed zoning area of the parcel. So the TR4 section, which is the west side of the stream, is approximately 4.5 acres. And the SR2 section, which would be the east side of the stream, which does gain more slope, is approximately 12 acres. We also looked at the areas of development around this parcel going along North Fork Road and noted that many of the lots along Walker Cove and Daniel Lane are currently non-conforming as they are less than 1 acre with the minimum lot size in the CR1 district. Many of the lots off of Green Drive and Dogwood Drive are also smaller than 1 acre. And then some other points of discussion are just about zoning practices in general in urban areas. This area does not utilize any transition zoning, which is not required by law, but is a very typical practice. Currently, it drops off from UR8 to CR1 kind of suddenly. We also have public utilities in this area, and otherwise is fairly developed with residential development. And utilizing such large lot sizes, an acre lot, in an area like this is a little unusual. Normally you would see that in areas that it's difficult or certain environmental conditions prohibit accessing the area or providing public utility services. Or you may see them in ETJs, areas that are particularly environmentally sensitive or unique in some particular way. Or closer to the edge of town where you're trying to reserve larger tracts for camps and agricultural activities, resort centers, conference centers, big uses like that. So these were some additional points of information for you all to consider. I know that we want to review where we left off. The original request from the applicant was to go to UR8, and then Planning Board suggested and recommended the split zone. And at the last meeting, if I recall correctly, the applicant requested that the whole parcel be TR4 and not a split.
And the planning board, on the original request to zone the entire all the acreage, TR4, it failed, but how was it, what was the vote?
There was a tie,
It was a tie vote.
and that's how the split zoning recommendation came about.
Right. So the original request to rezone the entire parcel was 3-3. And then after the tie, then there was this sort of a compromise offered.
So the planning board did approve the TR4 and the split, the TR4 and the
Yes, ma'am.
SA2.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the vote on that was,
The vote on that was
5-1.
5-1, that's
5-1.
right.
5-1 in favor.
5-1 in favor. Correct, yep.
Jessica, I have a question. Is there any benefit to transition zoning in this area?
I think generally when the point of transition zoning, it's a gradual shift in the landscape. If you think about a zoning map in general terms of concentric, these circles that work their way out, you're looking at intensity of use and density of uses, right? And they typically, in some form or fashion, inch their way out. If you look at the zoning map now, it goes from our most dense allowable district, drops off, and then, but it's actually developed at a more moderate level than indicated in the current zoning, because you have that area of non-conforming development around this parcel.
You go all the way out North Fork Road, you get lots of variety.
Yes.
Anything else, Jessica?
I think we also did talk about the stream buffer ordinance that you all recently adopted that would be applicable in this scenario.
And will that help protect, because I know there is some concern about runoff for potential development, their runoff to the golf course.
Yes, the stream buffer ordinance is a minimum of 15 feet or as much as 30, depending on the intensity of use. If this were developed in its totality, you would see that 30-foot buffer required. You would also see stormwater ordinance come into play at that point. The only time you would really see that 15-foot buffer is if it were an individual house or something like that, a much lower intensity.
Okay.
Good. Anything else, Jessica?
No.
Josh? Anything else? On
At
the
some
information side,
point,
staff side?
I'll read public comments when you're ready, but I don't know that I think maybe after public comment, just procedurally, we can go through the consistency statement.
Right. That sounds
But
good.
I don't have anything else from staff side,
Okay, you'd rather do that after the public comments?
probably.
Okay. All right, so go right ahead with public comments.
All right. So the first public comment for this one is Mr. Lowry Reed, and it states, I would like to, I'll just give you his address too, 830 Hiwassee Avenue, Black Mountain. I would like to protest the rezoning of this area to high density. I'm a homeowner on the corner of Hiwassee and North Fork, and I have firsthand experience of the traffic on this road. Just last month, I woke up to find a car that had slid into my yard, narrowly missing a very large tree. Drivers routinely exceed the speed on this twisty, poor visibility road, and adding higher density housing would only exacerbate the situation. Next, I have a comment from Cass, and I'm going to butcher this last name. First name is Cass, last name is Sochaki. To whom it may concern, I am writing as a concerned citizen over the proposed zoning change to the property owned by Sam Decker on the corner of North Fork Road and Walker Cove Road. I live on Walker Cove Road with my wife and 2 young children. This particular property holds significance to me as a picturesque entrance to my road and a gem of open space in the town of Black Mountain. I am asking the board to deny Mr. Decker's request to rezone this property to high-density residential. The property should be zoned CR1 just like all the other surrounding property. What makes this property any different? ? I fully agree with the letter submitted by my neighbor, Jake Linke. It saddens me to drive through town and see new high-density developments going up in all the empty spaces and old farmland. The town doesn't have the need or infrastructure for all this development. We moved to Black Mountain from Asheville because we are small-town people who value nature, community, and the relaxed atmosphere of a small town. My family is asking the board to please consider a balanced approach to the town's future development. The zoning of this particular property is the perfect step towards considering a more checked and thoughtful development strategy for Black Mountain. Next, I have a comment from Ms. Kathleen and Mr. John English. We live at 55 Highview Drive and are within 200 feet of the Sam Decker property. We watched with interest the Planning Committee's meeting to consider his requested rezoning from CR1 to UR8. While we understand his desire to use proceeds from his property to finance his retirement, we urge him to pursue that goal within the existing CR1 zoning. Our reasons: the infrastructure on North Fork Road is already woefully inadequate for the existing traffic and rainfall. This property lies directly across the road from an area zoned for conservation in the town's 2014 future use recommendations. While the part of the property closest to us will fall under steep slope guidelines and development, therefore will probably not affect our home's value, dense construction on either of the open field or slope will cause additional environmental strain on the waterway system that feeds into Lake Tomahawk, contrary to the intention of the conservation zoning of that area. The expense to the town to make the necessary infrastructure accommodations will divert funds from other needed projects. We believe retaining the existing CR1 classification will strike the balance between allowing Mr. Decker to use his resources and maintaining the vision for the town's future as depicted in the past planning documents and the current work being done by Elevate Black Mountain. Would you please read this letter at the next Aldermen meeting? Now I have a letter from Jay and Casey Linke, 45 Highview Drive. My name is Jay Linke. I reside at 45 Highview Drive. My family, my wife, and 2 young daughters have recently purchased our home adjacent to the applicant's land. We were drawn to the location both by the serenity and seclusion of the surrounding forest and by the proximity to downtown Black Mountain. We, along with our Highview Drive neighbors, cherish the natural beauty and wonderful rural community that the area offers. We share over 300 linear feet of property boundary with the applicant. While I acknowledge the applicant's intentions, I wholeheartedly disagree with any notion that the parcel should be zoned anything other than CR1. Having earned a master's degree in city and regional planning from the University of North Carolina, I'm well versed in land use and sustainable development matters, and I maintain a keen interest in local planning initiatives. Several years ago, the town convened to update the town's comprehensive plan, which is described as a roadmap that provides guidance on where and how the town will grow and change over time. The effectiveness of any comprehensive plan largely depends on the underlying zoning. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, one of the key objectives of a zoning ordinance is to provide a clear, deliberate framework that steers community growth, a framework that, when enforced consciously and carefully, supports a thriving community for generations into the future. I am concerned that rezoning the applicant's property to TR4 or SR2 would diverge from the vision statement set forth in the comprehensive plan and would have detrimental effects on the immediate natural and built environment and on the character of the surroundings as well as the town itself. There are many positive attributes that support the zoning map as it is drawn today. Focusing higher density towards the town center encourages walking and biking, which decreases fossil fuel emissions and minimizes automobile congestion and the need for additional parking downtown. Denser town centers preserve rural space on the town periphery like CR1 zones have successfully done for decades. Rural buffers in turn allow for natural stormwater infiltration, reduce erosion and sedimentation of our streams and lakes, and preserve wildlife habitat, which is crucial as the Black Mountain and Buncombe County continue to grow. If the roughly 16-acre parcel is subdivided into lot sizes allowed under TR4 or SR2, I worry that town infrastructure will be overburdened and environmental quality and character of the surrounding neighborhoods will be degraded. North Fork Road and the associated stormwater infrastructure is already stressed by the low number of rural residents that live within the town limits and outside. Adding as many as 64 more homes would require improvements to North Fork Road. The road is neither pedestrian nor bike friendly. In fact, it's the opposite. Though it is less than a 2-mile trip, new and existing residents alike are forced to drive to town out of concern for their own safety. In addition to transportation infrastructure, the environmental consequences would be considerable. First, extensive disturbance of steep slopes like those that exist on the property would exacerbate existing erosion and sedimentation issues. Second, the addition of impervious surfaces would increase stormwater runoff and eutrophication of downstream aquatic resources. North Fork Road already floods during heavy rain events. In addition, signs of negative environmental impacts are already noticeable. Stream banks within the golf course are eroding, and as I write this, Lake Tomahawk sits empty for dredging an improvement that will be required with greater regularity as upstream development continues. Notably, stormwater from the property flows directly into Tomahawk Branch, which drains into Lake Tomahawk, a beautiful community gathering place enjoyed by the entire town. Upstream greenfield development poses a direct threat. Third, the forest, which has been preserved in large part by CR1 zoning designation, provides valuable habitat for local wildlife and migratory birds, offering inherent value to the community at large. My overarching concern is that these impacts will not have been given their requisite consideration if the applicant's request is approved. The applicant is requesting a zoning change with the intention of one day being able to develop the parcel with high-density residential lots. The purpose of zoning, however, is not for individual landowners to manipulate to best suit their future aspirations, but instead is to be used as a tool for governing bodies to implement and protect the collective desires of the broader community and carefully steer growth in a way that is consistent with the town's vision for the future. I ask, how would such a change fit within the town's long-term planning goals? ? What unforeseen consequences would accompany such a change? ? What effect would this change have on supporting infrastructure? ? And finally, and ultimately, would this fit the character of the community? ? I have two more. This one would be from Kathy and Kenny Phillips, 26 Highview Drive, Black Mountain. We live on Highview Drive, which is off Walker Cove and within 200 feet of the property at 324 North Fork that the Board of Aldermen has received a request to rezone to higher density. While I understand the property owner's request to rezone this property, I strongly disagree that this parcel should be zoned to anything other than CR1, which is what all adjacent parcels are zoned. I also strongly disagree with the Planning Commission's recommendations to spot zone a portion of this property. It is my understanding that the owner would like to increase the density in order to make his land more attractive to developers. Spot zoning should be undertaken spot zoning should not be undertaken just so that property owner can make more money on the sale of their land. In addition, there are many aspects and consequences of spot zoning and high-density zoning that I would like the Board of Aldermen to consider. There are many reasons that support the current CR1 zoning. The major portion of this property, the portion to the east of Tomahawk Branch, extends all the way up to the ridge and would be subject to steep slope guidelines as my property, which is less than 200 feet from this property, was when we added on to our home. I don't believe increasing the density of higher regions is appropriate and could cause problems with erosion and stormwater runoff, as we have seen in other higher developments. We already have problems with runoff from this property flooding North Fork and the bridge during heavy rains. If this parcel is subdivided into lot sizes allowed under the TR4 or SR2 levels, I worry that town infrastructure will be overburdened and environmental quality and character of the surrounding neighborhoods will be degraded. North Fork Road and the associated stormwater infrastructure is already stressed. Adding up to 64 more homes would require improvements to North Fork Road. The road is neither pedestrian nor bike friendly. It's very dangerous. Though it is only a 2-mile trip, I have found it impossible to walk or bike to town safely, which I would very much like to do. This increases the number of cars in downtown and contributes to the parking problem. I do not believe increasing the density on this lot is in keeping with the comprehensive plan, which calls for more walkable and bikeable roads. The addition of impervious surfaces would increase stormwater runoff. North Fork Road and the bridge on North Fork already flood during heavy rain events. Numerous signs of negative environmental impacts are already noticeable. Stream banks within the golf course are eroding. The bridge on the golf course is currently undergoing repairs due to flooding, and Lake Tomahawk now sits empty for dredging, an improvement that will be required with greater regularity as development continues. Stormwater from the North Fork parcel flows directly into Tomahawk Branch, which drains into Lake Tomahawk. Upstream development poses a direct threat. My concern is that these impacts will not have been given enough consideration if the property owner's request is approved. The owner is requesting a zoning change with the intention of one day being able to develop the parcel with high-density residential lots. The purpose of zoning, however, is not for individual homeowners to manipulate to best increase their profit at sale, but instead is to be used as a tool for government to implement and protect the collective desires of the broader community, carefully steer growth in a way that is consistent with the town's vision for the future. I asked you to consider whether this rezoning is in line with the town's long-term planning goals? ? Is the town ready to spend money required on infrastructure, road, bridge, and stream maintenance, repairs, and construction that would accompany this change? ? What effect would this change have on supporting infrastructure? ? Does high-density development Does high-density development fit within the town's comprehensive plan? ? I respectfully ask that you do not grant the request to rezone this property. Jim and Pat Ward, 303 Laurel Circle Drive. We are hoping after the hurricane residual rains last week and the amount of runoff again into Lake Tomahawk, and with additional time to review the rezoning request, that the petition by Mr. by Mr. Decker's property at 324 North Fork to be rezoned will be denied and current zoning as CR1 will remain. We feel the same with regard to Mrs. Begley's request off Sunset Drive, leaving zoning at current TR4. Obviously, having zoning change to higher density makes the property more desirable, marketable for development. Yes, property owners should be able to develop their property, but within limits as to what is best for a community at large. I disagree with Jesse Gardner that every square foot of in town does not need to be developed, as we are not a city. We do not have the infrastructure in place to adequately accommodate high density development. Narrow, winding 2-lane roads are not set up for higher density development. Not certain what the point of having a planning board in place for that board to tell the petitioner why the proposal has been denied, and then the petitioner hopefully get a favorable review before the Board of Aldermen with absolutely no attempt to modify additional requests. If you have qualified people in these positions, then you should be deferring to them or hiring staff in lieu of volunteers. Thanks for your consideration and appreciation, and I appreciate the ability to now listen to the meetings via YouTube, and I think I have one more, so it's going to be a dual comment of both, but I want to make sure I read it. Bear with me just 1 second here. This is from Robin Josephs. I have her address on here, but she asks, please deny both zoning changes on tonight's agenda, or at least postpone decision-making until the new elected board members take office. And that's the end of the public comment for 324 to North Fork.
Thank you.
I have one to add that came in on YouTube. Matt Turner says, quote, in my personal opinion, this should be moved until next month when the new board is present.
Mr. Ron, we need to close the public hearing.
If that's all the information that's coming
All
in.
the information, any other information for staff? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Very good. Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right, Gordon.
Next step is to adopt the statement of consistency. Is that right? As presented, or?
The order, we're in this little muddle right now with 160D, but the procedure before was that you adopt a statement of consistency before you pass the motion if you know the standards of the statement of consistency before you pass the motion to rezone in whatever fashion. I would say, actually under 160D, you're not as locked into that, doing it in that order, because 160D, you can literally roll your statement of consistency into your motion and order. So if it works better for this board to see where you're going first and then look at the statement of consistency, you can do that.
Let's do that, so we can roll it into whatever motion is made.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think following the sheet is still helpful, just so you make
Right.
sure it's done.
And does everybody know where that is in your, well, actually, we were handed this one separately.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So whenever the board, if someone offers a motion, incorporate the statement of consistency into your motion.
As if that isn't enough burden. This is a spot zoning. And you've got a higher level of reasonableness that you have to find. And the factors that are to be considered were set forth in a case years ago in Guilford County. And the factors are, you balance the size of the tract in question compared to the total area, the compatibility of the disputed zoning with the existing comprehensive zoning plan, the benefits and detriments resulting from the rezoning. And that's the benefits to the guy asking for rezoning more important or more significant than the detriment to the surrounding neighborhood. And then the relationship between the uses envisioned under the zoning and the uses currently present in adjacent tracts. That's sort of a broader way of saying is it's similar to what's happening around it. I think this is where we came to a standstill last time.
It is certainly.
And, this, what I provided to you was the consistency statement that the planning board used,
Planning board.
just for hopefully some, it may guide you on your decision.
So we can make a motion now, following these guidelines that the planning board, is that permissible?
That's what we're, yeah, that's
what
where,
we're trying
that's
to
where we
do.
are. That's
Yeah,
where we are,
right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're ready for board action. Your action would be to take any, make any motion you want to, but you can also continue it if that's what you feel like doing. But, I think you've got all the information in front of you. And just a reminder, Alderman Stone made a motion that was defeated 4-1 to keep it CR1, and a motion to on the other end of that to go TR4 with the entire parcel was withdrawn, and so I might focus your attention on what the planning board's decision. That's what they're there for. And if you object, you have some reason to object to what the direction they've provided, then, that's fine. So be it, and state that and move forward. But that's a consideration. It's not an insignificant consideration. That's why they're there.
So my question for the planning board, when you looked at the property, does it definitely meet the east side of the property, it meets the SR2?
Yes, the east side that has the slope with would be with the larger lots.
Okay, and the other one does meet the TR4?
It would. I mean,
Okay.
they're large enough to be subdivided into those lots meeting those sizes.
Well, it looks like to me, from the CR1 and then they were requesting UR8, that this is a good place to meet in the middle with this particular property. I think the way they have it with the TR4 on the west and the SR2 on the east, that's how the planning board went. I'm comfortable with that myself. After listening to all the input, so I can make that motion,
You
right?
certainly could. You
To
could
go
make it
with-
down.
Go with the planning board's decision on this ordinance.
So the motion is the planning board recommended CR1 to TR4 on the west side of the property and CR1 to SR2 on the east side of the property. Is that your motion? And how to incorporate the consistency statement into that, Ron?
Well, we've addressed the consistency statement, and all you've got to find it is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, some verbiage that supports that, and is reasonable in the public interest. And again, that reasonable in the public interest is a little higher standard for spot zoning than normal zoning.
Right.
And the factors to look at are the size, the total size of the tract being developed, and it's, as you heard, it's relatively good size. The character of the surrounding properties, which Jessica's told you, a lot of those are more dense than CR1 already. And the detriment is, from the information you got, whether the detriment to the neighborhood is greater than the benefit to the property owner.
Okay, so Savannah, can you incorporate that into the motion at the end of the day appropriately? Yep, so again, I'll repeat the motion. It is that the planning board, that the Board of Aldermen adopt the recommendation from the planning board, CR1 to TR4 on the west side of this property, and CR1 to SR2 on the east side of the property, with the consistency statement with the elements that our town attorney just outlined to us being part of that motion, because this is spot zoning.
It is.
All right, so you have that motion. Is there any discussion? Any questions for staff? Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, can I get clarification on one issue? It says that Mr. Decker's property does not butt up to UR8, which is there's one property in between, and that one property that is UR8 is the Lynx condominiums. Is that correct?
Any other questions? If not, Alderman Stone?
Ryan Stone, no.
Archie Patillo, yes.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Thank you. Passes 4-1. All right. So, need a motion to open the public hearing to rezone 134 Sunset Drive, 6 Vance Drive, and 99999 Vance Drive from TR4 to UR8.
So moved.
Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right, thank you. And staff report.
All right, so this is another spot zone. Mrs. Ruby Begley submitted a rezoning application for 3 adjoining properties, 134 Sunset Drive, 6 Vance Drive, and 9999 Vance Drive. Currently, the properties are zoned TR4, and the application requests that the properties be changed to UR8. The subject parcels are bordered by TR4 and CR1 districts and are separated from the HB8 district only by the interstate. So this is a spot zone request. As you are all familiar with by now, these spot zones requests are not prohibited but are subject to some greater scrutiny. No project has been proposed. This is only a rezoning request, which does not require a plan or a project to come forth. The plan review and permitting processes, which every project in town is subject to, ensures all necessary ordinances are applied as needed, such as stream buffers, infrastructure availability and capacity, or traffic studies. The planning board heard this request at their September meeting and voted 3-2 to not support the approval of the application. Planning board found the application was consistent with the comprehensive plan, citing concentrating density along I-40, but said it was not reasonable because of the possible negative impacts on the community, including traffic and property values being declined. In total, the properties comprise 11.26 acres and are situated between I-40 and Sunset Drive. None of the 3 parcels are subject to the steep slope development requirements, with the greatest slope being a little over 19.5%. The current conditions of the property include undeveloped land, it's wooded. A stream runs through the lower half of 134 Sunset, but is not identified with any floodplain or floodway. It is encumbered by an 8-inch MSD line which transverses 134 Sunset and a 6-inch MSD line that crosses both of the parcels on Vance. The surrounding area is developed with single-family homes and approximately has 5 undeveloped lots. The parcels are served by town water. There's a 6-inch line running up Sunset. And the parcels are accessible both through Sunset and Vance, and there are no sidewalks. The parcels are not subject to any overlay districts. There's, like I said, no floodway or floodplain on the properties. The permitted uses between the existing and requested districts are the same. Permitted uses which have additional requirements differ only slightly. Multifamily is allowed in UR8, whereas conditional use in TR4. And recreational services are not permitted in UR8, but are permitted in TR4 with additional requirements. UR8 allows for bed and breakfast home, whereas TR4 allows for bed and breakfast inns. The setback requirements for the districts are the same, with 20 in the front, 10 on the side, and 15 in the back. And the height max is 35 feet in both. The greatest difference to appreciate between these districts is lot size. TR4 requires lot size be at least 1/4 of an acre, whereas UR8 requires 1/8 of an acre. Given the permitted and the conditional uses that are currently allowed in the TR4 district, these properties could be developed in the desired density by utilizing duplexes or a planned unit development, even if this property is not rezoned. That said, if a development were proposed or created at some point at this location under UR8, we do not have a definitive understanding of how much property would be available to be utilized in that process, considering the encumbrances of easements and streams and things of this nature. It also takes infrastructure such as roads to create such developments. And that is the nuts and bolts of this application.
Josh, you have anything to add?
Just comments, that's it.
Any more information from Jessica the board needs before we move on to public comments?
Would you tell me again the total acreage there?
It's a little over 11 acres.
Oh, okay.
And the planning vote was 3-2?
To not recommend.
To not recommend,
Yes, sir.
okay. Thank you.
Would that road be available for a traffic study?
It depends on the type of development proposed.
So it would have to, okay.
Any other questions? Josh, public comment?
All right, I'll start out with Robin Josephs. Please deny the zoning change on tonight's agenda, or at least postpone decision-making until the newly elected board members take office. This is from Louise Ford. I am again writing to strongly oppose the rezoning of the parcel of land on Sunset and Vance to urban/high density. The planning board denied the request at the end of September after listening to the concerns of the area residents. Sunset Drive, the road that services this area, is narrow and curvy. As a resident of Disselway Street, Sunset Drive is the only way to access my home. Even at this time, I must be vigilant about car traffic and foot traffic. A large increase of traffic, which would be a result of high-density development, would make travel on this road hazardous. Also, there are no sidewalks on this road, nor is there room to build them. The zoning request stated that the area is easily walkable to town. It is not. This land parcel is surrounded by approximately 22 single-family residences and 5 empty lots. A high-density building area would greatly change the character and makeup of the neighborhood. I urge you to oppose the zoning change. It will only negatively impact our neighborhood and overall community. This is Sharon Allison. We are an affected parcel in this matter. It is our belief that the road network around and on Sunset Drive will exceed carrying capacity if a high-density development is allowed. As such, there is simply no way this spot zoning won't diminish surrounding property values. This is profoundly unfair to others in the neighborhood. The planning board made the right decision, and it is our hope that the Board of Aldermen will do the same. I don't have a name for this one. There are more than 5 illegal roosters and chicken farms that are on Westview Drive, especially at the entrance into it. As a resident here, I am for the rezoning as it might help with this problem. This is Kelly Risch. Dear Black Mountain Board of Aldermen, I would like to go on record as not supporting changing the zoning for the 11 acres on Sunset Drive from residential TR4 to urban UR8. It is my hope you take into consideration the Planning and Zoning meeting on October where they voted 3-2 to keep the zoning the same. I urge you to come to Sunset and look at it for yourselves before making a decision. Then head to Henson's parking lot and look up and picture the massive change. Right now, it is a dangerous road, narrow with turns. We are always looking out for walkers, dogs, bikers, and other cars. I cannot imagine more cars. I would stress a traffic study to be done before a decision. Drainage is a big issue as well. Several areas flood, makes it slow going, and with more cars, it would be a nightmare. The environmental aspect is huge also. The entire landscape will change with massive tree removal. It would greatly sadden me to see that change. Along those lines, the ecosystem would be disrupted from birds to bears, and quite honestly, that is what attracted us to this area. To see that change so much would be heartbreaking. When decided where to move, we chose here due to the zoning. We were happy to live on a residential street. We did the urban thing, it's overrated, and we would really hate to see that change. Thank you for your consideration. This is from concerned property owners on Sunset Drive. We are adjacent property owners to the properties that are under consideration for rezoning on Sunset Drive. We would like to voice our concerns that this proposed rezoning would negatively affect property values in the neighborhood. It would drastically alter the character of the neighborhood, which is composed of mostly wooded, private single-family lots. At October's Aldermen meeting, the town manager misspoke and said that the planning board had a tie vote as to whether to recommend for or against this proposal. As there were many residents in attendance at the planning board meeting, we all heard the planning board vote 3-2 to recommend against the rezoning. The reasons summarized were that it would negatively affect the existing neighborhood and the existing road infrastructure would not support a development of the size that would be allowed under the proposed zoning. Sunset Drive itself is in poor condition to handle the increased traffic this would bring. It is a narrow road that drops off with no guardrails on either side. Traffic sometimes has to stop to allow a vehicle from the other direction to pass. Also, the road is sinking in several places that are adjacent to a stream that flows beside it for a good portion of its length along the properties in question. Mention has been made about providing affordable housing that is walkable to downtown. The statements made by the landowner's son in the planning meeting were that their property would be sold to a developer. To date, there has been no concrete mention of affordable housing from an actual developer. Previous attempts to provide for affordable housing in the town and new developments have not been successful. We are concerned that allowing for greater density in the hope for affordable housing will just result in more units being developed that do not fall into the classification of affordable housing while ruining the quiet tree-filled charm of our neighborhood. It was also stated that the new development would be walkable to downtown Black Mountain. There is currently not an easy, safe, walkable route to downtown Black Mountain from Sunset Drive, which is completely severed from downtown by I-40. Sunset Drive itself is dangerous to walk on given vehicle speeds and curves. It has no sidewalk. Sidewalks that pass by the businesses at exit 64 and cross the I-40 exit interchange are also dangerous. It was discussed at the planning board that because the property was near I-40, higher density made sense because nicer homes would not be built in this area. This is insulting to the existing neighborhood. We feel that our homes are nice along with existing tree canopy that adds value to our neighborhood and would invite aldermen to visit the neighborhood for themselves to see. Any of us will be happy to show you around. Please vote to deny this request. All right, don't have an address here. Danny Presley, opposed to the proposed rezoning on Sunset Drive. He feels it has the potential to add too many houses and too much traffic. Terry Presley, 65 Sunset Drive, opposed to the proposed rezoning on Sunset Drive. Sandy Presley, Dalton Street, opposed to the proposed rezoning on Sunset Drive. Ricky Mundy, 141 Sunset Drive, also opposed to the proposed rezoning on Sunset Drive. This is from the Newton and Myers household. I am writing to you today regarding the discussion tonight about the zoning of the properties off Sunset. We live on Dissaway, about 2 houses up from Sunset. Thus, we walk and drive on Sunset almost every day. We're very concerned about the zoning proposal in our residential neighborhood. Sunset's very narrow, and that much more traffic would be alarming. We have many neighbors and families with children who walk and walk their dogs, and they already have to try to get off the road when a car comes by. There are already blind curves and no shoulder for any buffer. If you are walking properly on Sunset, opposite of the traffic, and a car is passing you, it is necessary for the car to pull into the lane of traffic that is going the wrong way, and with blind curves, this is dangerous for everyone. Increased infrastructure would help, but there's not much shoulder space to expand, and the road is already crumbling at the edges where cars have tried to move over and run off the side. This zoning change could mean anywhere between 60 and 150 extra car trips down Sunset every day, and this is unthinkable. This is a quiet neighborhood of single-family dwelling homes, and we moved here because of this, as well as the nice tree cover that buffers the interstate noise. Changing this for all of the people who already bought homes in this neighborhood because of this fact undercuts our quality of life and potentially our home values. There was also misinformation shared by the property owners who want to change the zoning at the last zoning meeting. This information made it sound like a trail was available that makes this area more walkable than it is. We wish that there was such a trail that made it safer to get to town without walking on Sunset, but a federal chain link fence that leads up to Interstate 40 stretches along the properties along Highway 9 and prevents such a trail. Much more discussion around the implications of such a massive change and decision on 10 to 11 acres in the middle of our neighborhood needs to be had before any changes are made. I would urge you to listen to the citizens' voices on this matter to see if there is general support beyond that of the property owners. We would like to invite the Board of Aldermen to come out and visit this area and meet at a safe distance with local residents who are concerned about this zoning change before making such an impactful decision. Please let us know how we can help host such a visit. I don't think I've read this one, but it looks very familiar. I'm going to read it. We are writing to express concerns in opposition to the rezoning of 134 Sunset Drive and 6 and 99999 Vance Avenue, a topic that will be addressed in your September 28th meeting. We, the members of the community that live near the site, in addition to many other residents of Black Mountain, are extremely distressed at this proposal. There are already drainage issues and water pooling in this area, so we feel the environmental effect of the removal of such a large quantity of trees for higher density development will be profound as well as disheartening. Additionally, the entirety of Sunset Drive is not very wide, and there are homes that are extremely close to the road as is. If 90 homes were built and each had 3 cars, our neighborhood would have to support traffic from 270 more vehicles coming in and out during the day. Sunset Drive dead ends at the top of the hill. We cannot imagine any size development built off a dead-end road. We would rely on and propose to the town that a traffic study be performed before any such major rezoning be allowed. Sunset Drive currently terminates at Highway 9 with only a simple stop sign. We are already finding ourselves waiting longer and longer, not only at busy times of the day, to merge into traffic onto the number 9 roadway. We are aware of the growth rate in Black Mountain in recent years, and traffic has become tight and frustrating. It would not be hard to imagine a terrible bottlenecking if a high-density community and mass influx of traffic were added to Sunset Drive. Please give thought to a traffic study in this area before consideration of approval. Placement of the proposed high-density community is of concern. It would be highly visible for any potential tourist traveling I-40 westbound through Black Mountain and from town. The break in a now continuous mountain landscape many of us have always called home would be troubling. We as a community pride ourselves in living under this beautiful canopy of trees. Leaf season, as you already know, is a major reason for tourism in our quaint town. Much wildlife calls this area their home, and the people that live here honor them and do our best not to disturb the ecosystem. The statement in the motion to rezone of it will bring, in quotations, it will bring more residential homes within walking distance to downtown, in quotation, is a stretch, as it's well over a mile trek to downtown, unless you choose to cross the interstate. It is also questionable why being adjacent to I-40 would afford more affordable housing. We humbly request that you visit this site and consider preserving this area for rezoning for a high-density neighborhood. We also suggest standing in the middle of Black Mountain Town Square and imagine the view of the mountains with the inclusion of a major development littering the mountainscape. We trust that protecting our natural resources, preventing major environmental changes, conserving our wildlife and infrastructure, and preserving the natural look of our town will be considered. Due to the zoning amendment being rejected by our town zoning board as well as our concerns mentioned above, please deny the proposal to change 134 Sunset Drive, 6 Vance Drive, and 99999 Vance Drive from TR4 to UR8. We are appreciative of your hard work and service to your community, to our community. Please feel free to read this at the meeting. Our community would like to be heard, but remain anonymous. That'll be it.
Savannah, did you get any others while those were being read?
I have one more from Matt Turner who says to let the new board decide and to listen to the planning board.
Is there any other questions, informational kind of questions for Jessica or Josh on the board? All right, then I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
So moved.
Alderman Stone?
Aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right. All right, board, you have this rezoning request before you and the planning board's recommendation before you as well.
I would like to move that we follow the planning board's recommendation.
Yeah, I'd second Archie's motion.
Any questions on that? All right, Alderman Stone?
So we're going to deny this rezoning request, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
I just want to state it.
That's
Right, good, good.
That's correct.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right, and then the consistency statement associated with the motion, and you can read that.
I'm assuming, just from the nature of this, that it is the finding that it's not reasonable because of the impact on the neighborhood. So you're following the
Yes,
statement as
Correct.
it came from you from the planning board.
From the planning board.
that's correct.
Is that correct, board?
Yes.
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 Very good. And Savannah will incorporate that into the motion. Very good. C, public hearing for text amendments to road standards, land use code, and I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Alderman Stone.
Aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Jessica.
All right, so this mirrors what you did earlier under new business. It's only applicable to the land use code, though, which requires the public hearing. We had, particularly in the subdivision section, many references to a variety of road standards, methods of construction, size, placement, and we have reconciled those into a consistent standards and details document, and we have edited the text to refer back to this document instead of by a variety of different names and organizations. And this went to the planning board and was recommended by that.
Very good. No additional new information. It is
Absolutely
a
not.
clear compilation issue as much as anything else.
It is. We had certain sections that referred to town standards, and sometimes it said DOT standards, and they meant the same thing, but they were never defined. And this brings us into one document.
Right. All right. Any other questions for Jessica? Do we have any comments from the public?
No.
None from the public. I'd entertain a motion that the public hearing be closed.
So moved.
Alderman Stone.
Aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Thank you very much. All right, board, you have in front of you the motion to, the public hearing, the motion to adopt ordinance O20-15 as presented.
Mr. Mayor, this is Ryan Stone, I would move to adopt ordinance O-20-15 as presented.
Very good. Is there any discussion on that? Any questions? If not,
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
very good. Thank you very much. Public hearing for text amendments to water improvements. Jessica.
Did we open?
I'm sorry?
I just want to make sure the public hearing was open. I was reading. This is another very simple text amendment from the subdivision section where...
Wait, you're right. I did not vote. We didn't take a vote to open the public hearing, so forgive me. I'll
It's
stop
okay.
you there. So I entertain a motion to open the public hearing for text amendments to water improvements.
So moved.
Very good. Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Very good. Thank you. Now, Jessica.
So this is removing section 3.2.3, improvements beyond town limits. It says subdivisions located beyond the town jurisdiction shall not have access to town public services or water unless such developments comply with town zoning regulations or are part of an approved annexation or development agreement. Now, we retain under Water Administration annexation for water, so that's in the code of ordinances.
So we have that in our ordinances.
We do.
It's elsewhere.
We do.
Right.
And this little section is redundant in that nature, but also has some challenges in that it does not discuss abutting the town limits and things like that. So ultimately, we do not have jurisdiction to tell people beyond our limits they have to comply with our zoning. It's just a little cleanup.
Right. But just to clarify, again, informational, if someone is outside the city limits, they want, I know this is not in the information we're looking at in this particular ordinance, but in elsewhere in the, where is it contained?
It's in our code of ordinances.
Code of ordinances. Someone's outside the city, or development is outside the city limits, or it could be even just one residence outside the city limits, potentially could be. And they would like to have town water. We are reserving the opportunity to say we need for you to become part of the town.
So if you abut.
If you abut.
And for one home, the ability to provide that water is at the discretion of the Public Works Director if capacity is proven. But for developments, it has to be reviewed for annexation.
So it's really for developments. Does the ordinance in the elsewhere address it that way?
It does.
It's developments, not a.
It differentiates between
Yeah.
single-family homes and
I got you.
developments.
It's a little bit off point, but I think it's an important kind of thing to bring out.
Right, this does not change or modify
Right,
that.
Right. Okay, any other questions for Jessica? And any public comments, Josh, Savannah?
I have none.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion that the public hearing be closed.
So moved.
Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
All right, board, you have in front of you 0-20-16, and I'd entertain a motion to adopt it as presented. Or not.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 0-20-16 as amended.
All right, is there any discussion or questions? If not, Alderman Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Jennifer Willett, aye.
Maggie Tuttle, aye.
Pretty good. Communication from staff. Attorney Sneed.
All right. So that everybody could be home at midnight, I sent all of you a letter today. On October 12th, there was a letter, I'm assuming reached everybody, but it was addressed to the mayor and the town manager and the board of aldermen, in which a group who billed themselves as the Midland First Street neighborhood, Richard Post sent that letter, and it's 3 pages asserting a number of things about the daycare center permitting and development. And I'm going to give you the abbreviated version if you want the long version that's in the letter. But in his letter, there are 3 groups of things. And the first, he says, the zoning designation mandates the following criteria. And all of those theoretical criteria are in the statement of purpose for the district. Those are not enforceable criteria. Those are just sort of the big picture of what we'd like that zoning district to be. There's nothing there to be enforced. The second group, I addressed those separately, but one was why we don't have a stormwater system, and answered that in the letter to you, and this board directs, I'll provide this same information to Mr. Post and his group, that by removing impervious surface in other areas of the church property, they ended up with no net gain of impervious surface, so no stormwater required. And then the lack of a stormwater runoff plan, and that one's just sort of a mixed sentence. And I responded on that one that during construction, that's a county issue because they deal with erosion control. Doesn't mean we may not have a responsibility down the road that once construction is completed it begins, and there's a water runoff problem we have to address. But presently, there's nothing. The town has no control. And we cannot find traffic or noise studies in our ordinances. At the time, we now in our ordinance have a standard for when we call for traffic studies. We didn't at the time this development started. Since we didn't, I didn't go do a count and see if it would be applied. And it says, and noise studies. There's nothing in our ordinances anywhere that requires a noise study. And then it says Buncombe County requires an opaque border. Well, but Buncombe County ordinances obviously don't apply within the town. And our ordinances require a buffer only if, I guess a better way to put it, a more intense or industrial type use or less residential use abuts a zone of more restricted residential use, or, and I can't even remember the magic words, if it's industrial or commercial use, if it's in UA. Obviously, the staff in the course of looking at this didn't consider a daycare center as commercial or industrial. Industrial, I think it's pretty easy for the board to determine it's not industrial. And commercial is defined in our ordinances as being a use for sales and other items for profit. And this is a non-profit daycare center. So it doesn't fit the definition of either of the two things that screening is required for. However, for those of you driven by, you see there is some screening being done anyway. Part of that is because of the requirements of the daycare center itself, not necessarily because of helping out the community, but because they have to protect the kids. The open records request statement, I'm not, of course, they didn't identify what public records they requested and they didn't get, but they just said that they got some responses that are not required. I did put in that letter, that answer is not, that doesn't mean we're not required to give you this information because it's not public. That was used in the responses when they asked for a record that didn't exist, something we didn't have to do, and you don't have to create a record to respond. There is the size and placement of a sign that was questioned, and in fact, they were correct on that. Staff has approached the school that has, or the daycare center folks, and that sign has been removed, as I understand it. There's some demands at the end. One is, again, asking for the barrier that's not required by our statute, that we remediation any stormwater in time, maybe so, but that's not our problem issue now. Maintain a low traffic volume. That's a pretty general statement, and there's nothing in our ordinance that said that we have the ability to make that determination and do it. Confirm that the present trash dumpster is within the setback standards. I'm sure the staff will take care of that, and it'll be properly screened. However, I couldn't find in our ordinances that we have to insulate them from odors that they requested. And then, they asked for removal of the sign. That's been done. And then they state that they want the town to assure them that since this daycare center is going to reduce the value of their property, and there's no hard evidence there to do that the town will assure them that they'll be taxed accordingly. I've answered that one, that in fact, if you feel like you've got a lower value, then appeal that value to the county. They're the ones that make that determination. And that's the quickly spoken version of the 4-page letter you received.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron on that? No. So your letter, Ron, and the letter from this group of citizens will become part of the record in this meeting.
When it landed in your little hands, it became public record.
Public record, but it'll also be in the minutes of this meeting.
But if this board so directs, I'll provide that information.
Please do.
To the group.
Anything else, Ron?
That's it for me.
Thank you.
4 pages is my quota.
Yeah. Thanks.
I have nothing.
Thanks. Board?
I have something I'd like to say. This being my last full board meeting, I want to tell you and everyone else what an honor and a privilege it's been to serve. It's kind of bittersweet, but it's time for me to focus on other things. And I want to say probably the highlight of this service that I've had is getting to know the town staff and the people, how this town operates. And it is, what's the best adjective I can, it's unreal what they do with what they have. And this was a much more complex operation than I had anticipated. And there's a lot of moving parts, and everybody does their part, and I'm just amazed at the outcomes. And the other thing is getting to know all the volunteers that come and help with the town. That's what makes this town unique and so valuable to all of us. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you. Working with you has been my pleasure.
Thank you, Maggie. We appreciate you.
And I send my congratulations to Archie and Doug Hay and Pam King, and I'm sure things will keep operating well.
Thank you. Maggie, we appreciate you. Thank you for your service. And I've told you this personally, but you've been a very influential and significant board member these past, my goodness, has it been?
Time does fly.
It does, doesn't it? But anyway, thank you for your service. It's been a pleasure on my part as well, and I'm sure everyone else to be able to work with you. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you at least at the beginning of the next meeting.
Yes, I will be there.
Anyone else, board?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I can. I too just wanted to build on your comments from earlier and thank not only all the candidates for being brave enough and getting out there and expressing your views for the community and the respectful nature for which you all campaigned. It was very uplifting to see that, and I commend all of you for it. I also want to thank everyone that volunteered at the various polling places and at the early vote to help with the turnout, especially amongst this COVID world that we live in. To take that on and to see people do their civic responsibility is fantastic and uplifting. And I want to congratulate Archie on his victory and congratulate Jennifer and Maggie on their service. You two will certainly be missed. And just look forward to what the future holds. And since we won't see anyone until December, from me and my family to all of you and to everyone watching at home, we want to wish you a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the town and the board, and we'll see you, if not before, in December. And if there's no objection, we'll call the meeting adjourned.